I think for us major Nintendo fans, there are a few things bigger than a new console launch. I mean, obviously, games make the console, but a console launch really seems to represent new possibilities, a new kind of Nintendo from what we've seen in the past. So suffice to say, I've been counting down the days anxiously, and we're almost there. I thought it'd just be a little bit fun to go through my plans for Switch 2 on day one, assuming that I have a Switch 2 on day one. I assume and hope that I will. So the first major thing is getting that system transfer done. You can pretty much migrate everything from Switch 1 over to Switch 2, and then I'm unlikely to really touch my Switch 1 ever again. Unless there's some incompatible game that I just need to play for some reason, I would really like to just leave the Switch 1 totally behind. Then the next thing I want to check out is Mario Kart World, which I got the physical of, and right now it's scheduled to show up on the 6th, so a day after launch, which is unfortunate. I think I'll probably get a chance to play it day of regardless, due to other people I know getting a Switch 2. So I'm likely to play it, but whether or not my copy shows up is going to determine how much I'm able to invest in the single player, which is the part that I'm most interested about with the game right now. The open world mission exploration stuff is really what I'm looking forward to with this game. It's been a long time since the last mainline Mario Kart, and if I'm being honest, Mario Kart 8 really did not connect with me all that much. Especially the DLC for Deluxe I felt was kind of weak, so I'm really hoping that this game will draw me back in and make me fall in love with the Mario Kart series all over again. After that, I'd really like to take a tour of the eShop. I remember them specifically pointing out that the eShop is running better. It loads faster apparently and just runs smoother, and I'd like to see that confirmed, and I'd also like to see if there's been any changes to the way that the shop has been curated. Right now, it's dominated by a lot of low-effort asset flips and AI-generated imagery, and it just looks awful. The eShop's in a very bad place, so I hope that the Switch 2 can kind of mark a change in approach to how the eShop is handled, because right now I think it's pretty much unacceptable. Now, like I said, I do plan on playing Mario Kart, and that'll probably take up a lot of my time, but there's some other games that I'm likely to pick up on launch. For starters, there's Fast Fusion. This is a new racing title from Shinen, who's sort of known for their very technically impressive hardware showpieces. And I've seen a trailer for this, and it looks really good. I know that there's been some analysis done of it, and apparently it is pretty low res, but as far as like asset quality goes, it looks really impressive. And on day one, there's a 4K 60 FPS patch, so I really want to get this just so I have a piece of software that can really take advantage of all that hardware and, a true 4K game on release, is the hope at least. I guess we'll have to wait to see how that pans out in practice. By that same token, I'm also going to get Welcome Tour. I know that's pretty controversial right now. A lot of people were hoping that that would be a pack-in game, and I can agree, but it's fairly cheap, and critically, it makes use of all of the Switch 2's hardware functions. And that's just something that I really appreciate. I like being able to mess around with all the new stuff. I want to check out how cool the new version of HD Rumble is. I'd like to mess around with the mouse controls, because I'm not sure if any of the other games at launch are really making use of that. And I'm also just kind of a nerd for this stuff, so being able to go through an interactive teardown of the Switch 2, for example, it sounds like a lot of fun to me, or at least enough fun that I can plop down like the $10 or whatever it is. The other two games that I'm kind of on the fence of right now are like full price titles. There's Street Fighter 6 and Cyberpunk 2077. Cyberpunk is one that I initially was not super interested in. Obviously, it's an older title at this point, but CD Projekt Red putting it out on a real game cartridge, not a game key card or any of that, and saying that it's because it's the right thing to do. I mean, that thought process just really appeals to me, I guess. And so call it pandering or what have you, but that has really made me lean towards getting it a lot more. Street Fighter 6, on the other hand, is something that I'm more interested in from a gameplay perspective. When the Switch 1 launched, I picked up the Street Fighter 2 pretty early into owning it, and I just like having a fighting game like that, I guess. But I'm really turned off by their game key card plus code in a box setup that they're doing for this release. So if I do end up getting this, it'll just be a straight up digital download. I don't know, I need to think about both these a lot more before I make a decision. I'm also planning to check out the N64 Online. The service as it stands on Switch 1 actually is pretty decent now, I feel. I don't know if they've been updating this actively, but the input lag actually felt really fair on the latest version. and I don't know how much they've done to mitigate lag or whatever, but it felt pretty good. However, N64 in particular visually doesn't really hold up in the way that Switch and a lot of other emulators kind of present it when it's just like raw output. You get these texture seam problems where you can kind of see through parts of the level geometry to the background behind them, and it just doesn't look right. It's not very authentic to how N64 feels playing on actual hardware. So I think that for once, the CRT filter that they have on NSO could really come in handy to hide those issues that arise when you are outputting to a higher resolution. And hopefully with it being a 4K capable system now, the scan line effect or whatever process they're using to create that CRT look looks a little bit more convincing and, again, authentic to the original hardware. By that same token, I also want to check out the GameCube Online. Should have a GameCube controller arriving at some point. I kind of doubt it'll be there day one, but if it is, I'll give that a try. And I just want to see how GameCube feels on Switch 2. I know that there was some early impressions from the Switch 2 events that Wind Waker had some problems with frame pacing, that F-Zero paused occasionally. I think that happened on one reaction video I saw. So I'm really interested to see for myself how the GameCube emulation holds up. A lot of the GameCube library is in my top echelon of games. You know, the thought of playing Smash Bros. Melee online, for example, is very, very appealing to me. And I know some people who are very much looking forward to the Pokemon Coliseum titles being re-released, and hopefully it launches in a state that's better than the N64 was on Switch 1. Then there's just a bunch of titles that I want to try the backwards compatibility function with. For starters, there's Mario Odyssey. I talked previously about how this is one of my most played games on Switch 1, and I was looking forward to playing it on Switch 2. It was confirmed that there is a Day 1 Switch 2 update for it, which I believe they said is going to up the resolution and maybe make the frame rate more consistent or something like that. So, I mean, the game already looked really good, and I think it still holds up fairly well on a 4K TV, but I'm very interested to see what this visual upgrade will mean for the game. Is it just going to look better in handheld mode, you know, get a full 1080p picture? Or are we looking at something like 4K in docked mode? I feel like that is somewhat unlikely, but we'll see. At the very least, I think it'll look a little less aliased, which should also be true of Bowser's Fury, the other probably biggest game that I'm looking forward to playing again on Switch 2. Absolutely loved Bowser's Fury when it launched. However, the game was very demanding of the hardware. In fact, it kind of killed my original Switch unit. It would just overheat, and I had to actually send it away. And we're pretty sure they just sent me back a brand new Switch. I guess it's possible it could be my old model and they fixed it up, but when it arrived, we were like, there's something different about this. So the point is, the game really pushed the hardware. Sometimes it looks kind of rough in those more dramatic scenes with Bowser. And overall, the picture does look a little bit blurrier, I feel, than Odyssey. So hopefully upping that resolution, definitely getting the frame rate to hit its target a little bit better. And I remember they pointed out HDR in particular, and I can definitely see how that would really pop on the TV or in handheld mode, since it is an HDR capable screen. Then there's a couple that I want to look at just for sort of the trivia of it. We've got Link's Awakening, notoriously poor performing game on Switch 1. This one's getting a Day 1 update. However, they didn't actually shout out the frame rate, they only shouted out the resolution, which is a big concern because I think the game looks really phenomenal as is, but it's the frame rate that just really sucks in that one. So hopefully, maybe just the nature of running it on Switch 2, the frame rate will be more consistent. And that pretty much takes care of all the Switch 1 games I want to see from like a performance and visual angle. But I also want to try out Mario 3D All-Stars, really just to check and see if the GameCube support still works on Switch 2. My gut tells me that it will, but it's something I want to check, especially with Mario Sunshine being absent from the GameCube Online library at launch. And then if the GameCube controller does come in, I'd also like to see if the analog triggers on that work in Mario Sunshine and the 3D All-Stars collection. Also, as a side note, while I was collecting footage for this video, I was replaying a little bit of Mario Sunshine, and I think this game just needs a flat out remake or like a true remaster, because the cutscenes do not hold up on that collection. I remember people shouting out the cutscenes as looking a lot better now on 3D All-Stars, but like the upscale is really bad, and it looks absolutely disgusting at times. I'd show you some footage here of Peach's face, for example. It does not hold up. So really hope that for like the 40th anniversary or something, they put out a version of Sunshine and 64. I don't know, just remaster everything, remake it all again. It's in desperate need of it. Then the last thing, assuming that I have time, because this will be a very packed day already, I would like to pick up Split Fiction and start a playthrough of that. It Takes Two was one of our favorite games on PS4, you know, the last generation, I guess, as a whole. And I've just been looking forward to playing Split Fiction ever since I heard about it, ever since it was announced, really. So that's a definite buy. It's unfortunate that there is no physical release of this game. Not really anyway, it's a code in a box, right? So that's a little bit of a bummer. I would like to own it in a more permanent form, but it just wasn't in the cards. I think the game is actually too large for even a regular game card to hold, so that's a bummer. But yeah, those are the basic plans. I am thinking that depending on how things shake up, I may or may not be streaming some of this too. I do find that it can be sometimes a little bit draining to stream things at launch. I almost just rather enjoy watching other people stream something or watching YouTube videos about people's reactions rather than giving my own. But I could see myself testing some of this stuff out on stream just because, you know, launch day, the numbers will go brr. Just to be cynical about it for a second. So we'll see. But yep,